Keeping the recorder on. It's 6:04 p.m. Today is Tuesday, May 10th, 2022. This is the Bluff Town Council regular meeting. Roll call.
Linda Sosa.
Jim Sayers.
Luann Hook.
Brant Murray.
Ann Lepinen. Usually what we would do is we'd start with approval of minutes, but because of the edits that had to be done on the zoning ordinance, Linda wasn't able to finish up the minutes until today, so we didn't put those on the agenda. They'll be on next week's agenda. So there are no approval of minutes for tonight. Then this is public comment. There's a 3-minute limit for each person wishing to comment. If you exceed the 3-minute limit without permission from the mayor, you will be muted. I'm not sure who's going to do it since I don't know who has control. But is there anyone with public comment? Anyone want to make a public comment? If not, I'm going to close it off. Okay, it is 6:05. No one has asked for public comment, so that is closed. I'm just making a note here. All right, the first thing is a review of the fraud risk assessment and a vote on approval. We sent that out. Our accountant worked with us on this, and again, we scored very low on the assessment. So we have a low risk. The one thing we don't get points for that would be nice is, do we have a licensed or certified CPA or financial expert on our management team? But we don't. So has everybody reviewed it, and are you ready to ask questions or vote on it? Anyone?
Do you need a motion to approve as presented, Mayor?
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Then it's unanimous. Then the next thing is the tentative budget. So this goes in steps. So tonight you should have received this week the 2022 amended budget and the 2023 tentative budget. And inadvertently, an old working copy was posted, but that's now fixed on our website. So the budget for the amended proposed budget for 2022 should be correct, as should be the tentative budget for fiscal year 2023. And then the process is that if you look at these and have any questions right now, we have a public hearing scheduled for Thursday, at which time these will be presented formally and discussed formally. But for right now, what I need to have you do is look at them, ask any questions, and then take a vote on accepting these as a tentative 2022 budget amendment and a tentative budget for 2023. So did everybody look at the budgets?
Yes. And a lot of work goes into it. Thank you, guys. After reviewing it, I didn't have any questions, Mayor.
Motion to accept the tentative budgets.
Second.
Any other discussion on that? Then the public hearing will be this coming Thursday. And since I'll only have limited amount of paperwork, I'll go up to the office and hold the hearing in person as well as virtually. So if people want to come in person, they can do that.
Linda and Ann, thank you for the hard work.
Hey, thank you. Linda did a lot of work. It was really good working with an accountant. It shortened a fair amount of work for us because he was very organized. Linda was very organized on Polaris, and I kind of had a sense where we had to change things. So
I like it too. I want to vote for it.
And then the other thing I just want to remind you of that we'll have to have a discussion of the property tax rate. The same question that we've had the last year and a half is, do you want to change the property tax rate or keep it the same? And if we vote next week to keep it the same, it's a fairly straightforward process. If somebody wanted to increase it, we'd have to do truth and taxation hearings. And so that's something you should keep in your mind for this coming week. The other thing is that our accountant, Dave Sanderson, every month reviews our bank statements and looks at what's being done in Polaris. He has access to Polaris now, but he does not have access to Zion. It would be easier for Linda if he had access to Zion's because he could just look at the monthly statements and not have to get a hold of Linda and Linda copy them and then give them to me and me scan them and send them on. So can anybody make a motion on that?
I think we access.
We've got a vote. We've got a motion on the table that hasn't been voted yet.
Thank you. So on the tentative budget and the 2022 tentative budget, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. It's unanimous. That's why I shouldn't lump things together because I skip over stuff. So going back to Zion, any questions about what he'd be able to access? It would just be access viewing only.
It's fine.
Are you asking for a vote to allow that?
Yeah, we have to have a vote for that.
I'll make a
Oh, go ahead.
grant.
Go ahead. I defer to my colleague.
Access to Zion records for convenience and to make it work better.
Second.
Any questions about that? All right, then all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? It's unanimous. The one thing is I think, Linda, that either you or I need to call Zion and get I think there was a form we signed for Polaris to be able to access. So we should talk about that tomorrow. And one of us or both of us call up there. Then I just wanted to touch base on number 3, which is the discussion of the solar farm and my telephone conversation with the lessee. So as you recall from our last meeting, Dudley Beck was very passionate about us getting back to looking at the availability of a solar farm on the Bluff bench, and a number of residents supported that. But I had talked with Sam Sowers, who's the Regional Development Director for AES Clean Energy. And I talked with him on May 3rd, which was the day of our meeting, but I didn't feel it was properly before everybody since I had just talked to him that same day. The bottom line is that he requested that we not take it on ourselves to have a public hearing. AES, when they're ready, after they've done their due diligence and the environmental impact work, they will get a hold of us and they will ask for us to join in a public hearing. So it's kind of a partnership on that public hearing. They had a very good reason for doing it that way. They don't want us to jump the gun and hold a public hearing that would be lacking in information. They hope to present a full package as to what the environmental study showed, what the impact might be, where the location is, what the size is. And so I had assured him that I'd explain this to everyone and just sit back and wait for a couple of months until they do that. Any thoughts or questions, discussion?
Is that AES Energy?
Correct. AES, Clean Energy.
Oh, even better. Thank you.
And he said that they had pulled up our minutes from our meetings. They'd read those, they'd read our concerns, they'd read the letters we've sent. And it was actually very pleasant to deal with. And I think that, at least in my mind, that's the way to approach it. What do you all think?
Yeah,
Sounds good to me, Mayor.
All right, then we'll just let that sit. Update on the lighting ordinance and agreement with Dr. Barron team. I heard back from him today, and I'm just going to step away and get this out of the printer. I believe I printed it a minute ago. So he responded to me today after 5, saying that he has done similar reviews of the ordinance, comparing it to international dark sky requirements, and made specific amendments that would enable us to move forward. He's done those for Boulder City, Nevada, Jackson, Wyoming, Bisbee, Arizona, and Phoenix, Arizona. Bisbee's ordinance is most like ours, and he was able to complete the work for about $2,200. If that's acceptable, he can get to work on this as quickly as we can get the agreement in writing. So
Need a motion to do that, Mayor?
I do. Do you have any questions about it or thoughts?
I've read that little thing he sent us, and it sounds to me that for $2,250 he can rig us up ordinance wise. Am I incorrect on that?
No, it looks like what he'd do is review it, make suggestions, and then we could ask those specific questions. In my request to him, I said specific concerns that have been raised was whether we'd overkilled on the lumen requirement, whether we need to have a curfew piece. I think I raised 3 or 4 things that have been pretty generally talked about. But he said he had said before we can tailor the contract to what we want, and that's what I had put in there, that we're specifically looking for some insight on these other pieces plus a review of the whole ordinance.
Would he be able to come to a meeting?
If it's virtual, I'm sure he could, Lou.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, just a virtual meeting so that we can ask those questions that might come up.
I'm sure he could. He was very amenable in my discussions with him about being, we can tailor it, and it's just the hourly rate then versus a full scale, $22,000 or $22,000 package.
That seems great to me. We've got a lot of work done already, so that would be great just to have him kind of look it over and give us advice on those other points.
And Sarah Burak had pointed out that we have, the education piece in place. We've had public meetings. She and I can work on the pre-application information. So if we get the assessment of the ordinance as it's written now and kind of looking in the future, I'm comfortable with that.
I'll make a motion that we hire him to do that, Mayor.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any other discussion or comments? And all in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? It's unanimous. Well, as I indicated last week, I had completely spaced out the commission meeting on the 3rd. So I went in and listened to it today. And it was interesting. The piece that I wanted to listen to let's see, where did I put it? So they were talking about the pending lawsuit against the commission. And 4 of the candidates for the interim county attorney position filed suit against the commissioners. And they filed against the commissioners as a group, against the county election judge, and against the county administrator, who is Mac McDonald. It started off with Mac McDonald explaining to the commissioners that because of their vote at the meeting before, they had not followed the law as laid out by their own county attorney. They didn't follow the law as laid out by the second legal opinion that they obtained. And then, in addition to moving forward on their own to vote 2-1 to take the applications from outside of San Juan County registered attorneys, they had begun that process. So the suit was filed. There was a temporary restraining order issued in San Juan County District Court. And the hearing on that restraining order is on May 16th at 10 o'clock a.m. and it's virtual. The plaintiffs are Craig Halls, an attorney by the last name of Ivans, Alex Goebel, who's interim acting, and Anderson. I didn't catch the first name on that, but they're all local. So the temporary restraining order remains in effect until it's either terminated or extended, or until 14 days, whichever comes sooner. So they'll have the hearing. There was a great deal of discussion with Alex Goebel, who reminded them quite regularly in the conversation that he does not represent the individual commissioners. He represents the county. And he is not going to represent anything for the county because the county is not a party. So the named parties are the commission, Mac McDonald, and Lyman Duncan. There was a discussion about if they would vote to rescind that action and become compliant with what appears to perhaps be the law. And they just considered those 4 candidates. Would that remedy the situation? The interesting thing is that when MAC tendered this to their insurer, the insurer has declined coverage because there's no relief that they're requesting other than to comply with the law and attorney's fees. And the attorney's fees then would be covered from the general fund of the budget. So once again, the county commissioners have taken a path, or once again, there's a path taken that puts us into litigation and attorney's fees. There's then a discussion about, on the 16th, each of them should lawyer up, which means in an ideal world, according to Alex Goebel, they would need to have an attorney for the commission. They'd have to have an attorney for Commissioner Adams, Commissioner Gray Eyes, Commissioner Maryboy, Lyman Duncan, and Mac McDonald. Now, Mac might fall into the I don't think so, though. I think Mac probably has to have his own. They went back and forth on that point for a few minutes. Then they decided that they could do a special meeting, and they held that special meeting on the 3rd, or on the 5th of May. Was it the 5th?
Yeah, it's Tuesday. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they held it on the 5th of May, which was quite interesting as well, because Commissioner Adams offered a motion to put Alex Goebel in as the interim county attorney, and the motion died for a second. Commissioner Maryboy offered a different time to meet, and that passed. So I think they're meeting May 11th at 10 o'clock in order to review a list for each of them to figure out who they're getting as legal counsel. So it's kind of a mess. They could fix it if they wanted by going back to the original 4-person list, but who knows where it's going to go. I think they'll probably on the 11th go into closed session. That would be my guess. But the concern, and the reason this is part of the agenda is it does concern us because this is where your tax dollars are going. They heavily are going into litigation, and this one is going to be costly once again. So I think it's important that people know that this is happening. Any thoughts or questions? Okay, then if nobody has anything to say, then Lou, you have a report on planning and zoning.
Sure. So they met, let's see, it was the day after ours.
So the 4th?
Okay, yep. And the main thing that they were working on, well, the first thing, they had a land use clearance. Final information came through from Joe Hubbard at the St. Christopher's Mission. So that's all in place, and that land use clearance is through them and approved for the tiny houses out there. They're working on creating forms. This is they were trying to get the priorities for this next year, and so their priorities are creating forms, the idling ordinance, and coordinating a work meeting with us and with Bluff Waterworks, that sort of thing. So that was all that they did before we were going to have the joint meeting, and then we did not do the joint meeting, but Ann and I stayed on or joined them. And that was what we came up with. Those were their priorities. The one thing that came up was the noise ordinance, that the truck signs are gone, the Jake brake signs. And apparently there's something new in the legislature that only allows those to be posted if there's an ordinance. So that one was the kind of loose one, but that's all I have from that meeting. They did want input from us as a council as a whole as to whether those are the priorities, the creating forms, which they're pretty much done with, the idling ordinance, and getting a joint meeting. And the joint meeting was for planning and sustainability, so that like Bluff Waterworks knows what they're approving and they know what availability of water and service and all of that sort of thing. But go ahead, Ann, you were probably
I was just going to say that when I came back from Monticello at the end of last week, the Jake brake sign is still on that end of town. I don't know about this end of town if it's still out there, but the Jake brake sign, if I'm reading the sign correctly, it says no excess engine noise or something like that, but that's still out there. So I'll still follow up with Jared Beard about the sign and kind of where we're at with that.
Maybe we should go ahead and do an ordinance. And they won't have to move them and put them back. You know?
Well, I think that's what that discussion was. And what I'll do is put the priority discussion on next week's agenda for us.
Sounds good.
So anything else on planning and zoning, Lou?
I didn't have anything else.
Well, I went back and listened to the first part of the meeting because I wasn't on it. I was in another meeting. I didn't jump on it till 6:30. But I wanted to thank planning and zoning for all the work that they did on that zoning ordinance. It was awesome. And I did want to clarify a couple of things so that we're clear. there were roughly 55 edits that were proposed by planning and zoning to us. And of those, approximately 25 of those edits were approved without any discussion other than looking at them and saying they were fine. And we had about 30 bullet points to talk about. It really got down to just 6 edits that we had pretty good discussions about. And there were 10 edits that were just clarifying language. There were 10 edits of the 30 that were just things like preparing the table of contents, the date, that kind of thing. And so when you got down to the end result, there were 11 edits that we talked about pretty thoroughly. 5 of them went to a unanimous vote, and only 6 of them went to a vote where we were split. So we pretty much accepted a lot of what was done and modified a little bit with language. And a couple of things that we just didn't even touch that we think planning and zoning would be more appropriate for looking at. So I want to thank them for the hard work. The document, I went through and did the alphabetizing. They didn't do the table of contents for obvious reasons. They couldn't do it until we got it all laid out after we voted. So I think I've got it all done. I've signed it. I sent it out to all of you yesterday. I think that we're good. And if somebody catches a typo or something I've left out, we can certainly address it. There'll be other things we have to address down the road anyway. So thank you, planning and zoning.
Yeah, I want to thank Ms. Packish. I don't think I know her, but I read the minutes and they're very clear. I guess she's the new person who's doing the minutes for planning and zoning, and they're really done well. So thank you for stepping up on that.
That's a good point. So Kathleen Packish is the one doing the minutes now. So thank you, Kathleen. Then, Jim, you're up for the update on the CCC design review team, the grant, and the use of the CCC for temporary recycling.
We didn't have the meeting today. It was canceled because there's some confusion about who's doing what, according to what we discussed last week. So, but I can say that the discussion last week appeared to be just fine with the committee with regard to the recycling location. The rest of it, we're trying to resolve some discussions that are ongoing with regard to the contract and the requirements of the contract with regard to applying for grants. And of course, the necessity that we have a joint banking account. And that's kind of a conundrum for me right now. So anyway, there was some back and forth late in the game today, but I didn't get it in time, so I canceled the meeting. I wanted to discuss some things, but it didn't work out that way, so I canceled the meeting, and more later, I guess. I'm hoping all this resolves in a good way real soon.
Anyone have any questions for Jim about that? So there is an action item on that with the recycling piece. So I went to UDB and went on their agenda and explained that we'd like to do through Jim that we'd like to use a corner of the grounds for a recycling bin on a temporary basis. But because it's use of the grounds, I think that the council has to vote that that's an acceptable use on a temporary basis or not. And I will need to abstain because I'm on the committee for the community committee. That's not a committee of the town. So.
Mayor,
Yeah, I may abstain on that too.
we talked about when the recycling results came back to move this to more of an action item. So we're kind of waiting to see what the recycling survey yields. But we tentatively do have permission to use those grounds, I believe, once both boards ratify. And that's one of the things that Jim talking about, is to make sure that both boards are fully informed. This is something we're going to stress in our meetings going forward. Compliance with both boards. So I feel like we're in a good spot. We'll keep things moving forward.
So my question is, Brant, do you feel like it's not ready for a vote yet, that you need the recycling survey discussed?
If this board wants to vote to approve recycling on site, I don't see any problem with that, and we can talk about the conditions later, or we can wait, whatever you think, Mayor. Jim, you have an opinion on that?
No, I really don't.
So either way, I mean, I'd make a motion to go ahead and approve and let our board go ahead and approve, and the UDB boards will know that we have. But I think next week's fine if we want to hold off.
Okay, so maybe I should just explain what I think the process would be, is that if you wanted tonight, you could approve letting the recycling committee know that would be an acceptable temporary location. But the use and all of that is not, the bottom line is the committee needs to know if we have a location before we can determine whether it's single stream or sorted, whether it's residential pickup or drop off. And that's why we're just trying to find sites. But let me get the recycling survey back, and I'll just put it on for next week. And I'll let the committee know that the design review committee thinks it's acceptable. We still have to vote on it. Does that make sense?
It does, yes, ma'am. And we can let Heather know to talk to the EDB folks too, and let them know we're working on this, which I'll do. I walked over to her yesterday, so I'll be happy to just mention that to her if it's all right with Jim, for those guys that can start considering that.
Sure.
Okay, so I'll just move that to next week. Make sure that
After the committee looks it over and whatnot, I suppose they'll come back with whether it's drive in and drop off, or if it's inside the fence so stuff blows or whatever, those sorts of things. I don't know. It seems like it would be just fine, but I can also see that maybe we need to know kind of what the plan is.
right. And I think to get to the plan, Lou, we need to know, do we even have a site, because we haven't been able to find one. And so if this is a possible site because there's permission granted, it's whether it's doable. Can we get containers that are contained, that they're not blowing everywhere, all those kinds of things. So it's kind of try to okay each piece and then put it together and see how it looks. And nobody wants the trash blowing around. So
and I'd say that it seems like there's probably a consensus that if they have a good plan, that we go for it, is what I would pass on, I guess.
Well, let me just put it back on for next week, and I'll be in a meeting with recycling tomorrow, and we'll talk about it further and, with some pros and cons.
Sounds good.
I put on the agenda for number 7, quality of the YouTube audio, because I listened to one audio, and it was sounded like a herd of horses running in the background. But I understand that might have been the result of remote, doing the audio from remote YouTube.
Do you know
Because
which one were you listening to? Was it the planning and zoning? Probably. It probably was a planning and zoning. Yes. So that was the one that we tried doing remotely, and they didn't get fiber out to the mission like they were planning on. And so it was still just the old River Canyon whatnot. So that's what we think caused that interference, because it was from, from 2 minutes in it started, and then at 37 minutes it completely stopped for nothing. Nobody did anything differently. So it was probably just static in that Wi-Fi line. So tonight we're at the community center again. Oh, hold on just one second. You want to tell?
Oh, yeah.
Craig has some information on that, and he is right here.
So I was experimenting with She was asking me if I was interested in taking notes. So I was recording audio on my app, my phone, and so that was interfering with the mic. And so when I was listening to it, I was like, oh, this sounds like interference from a cellular network. So it was my phone. I'm sorry. It was next to the computer.
No, that's okay. You know, that's why we've got you running the technology. You know the problems. So
Yeah, no, that's actually a good, I'm glad that he figured that out, because we were talking about, a backup minute taker for the town or for planning and zoning, because he is sitting here running the YouTube video anyway. And if that's what caused it, that means that it does work to do it remotely if we're just doing the screen. So if nobody else is here but us and the computers, he can do it from somewhere else, because the other part of that was completely clear. So that's good.
Yeah,
Good.
I'll tell you, I'm very uncomfortable with asking Craig to do more than the technology. So I think if he's able to focus on that, that's what we really need. And we have a note, we have the minutes being taken, and I think that works just fine. That's my view.
And he maybe we can ask him if we have nobody here, like if it's when Linda's gone or if it's when Kathleen can't be there, would be a nice backup person. But anyway, he's doing great on the technology part, and we've got the screen up tonight, and TV that's kind of a big screen. Used to be a big screen, and it's working just fine, and the audio is working well tonight. So I think we're ready for the hearing. We'll be here for the hearing in person. So if anybody wants to come in, they'll be able to see the screen and hear the audio, and the video will work.
speaking of the TV screen, would you do a favor for me when you put it back in the office? Don't unhook the plug on the back of the TV, because in order to put that plug back in, we have to tip the TV over, and it takes two people. Just leave it plugged in.
Okay, so I was going to just plug it back in how you had. I was going to plug it into the wall and plug it into your computer. Is that okay?
As long as, the main thing is to have it plugged into the back of the monitor. That's what I can't.
We must have missed that.
Well, that's okay. It's just, it takes two people to do it, or it's going to go on the floor. So thank you.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Craig. You're doing a great job. Okay.
He says you're welcome.
If there's nothing further on number 7, we'll move to number 8. There's a request for local consent change, but I am going to move that to next week because I have a little bit of homework. It's been a while since we've done local consent, and I just want to be sure that we're doing it correctly before we have a discussion vote and signing off. And I've been told by the person making the request, who is Comrade Eat and Drink, that waiting a week is not a problem. So I want to just make sure I'm doing my homework.
Doing a motion to put that on next week, Mayor?
No, it's okay. We can just put it right on. But thank you, Brant. Well, number 10, we've talked about this amongst ourselves individually about.
Are you skipping number 9?
Oh, is there a number 9? Yes. Oh, I am. Number 9, I did not get the contract back from Chris, but let me tell you, what I'd like to do is introduce our hopefully new Bluff Town manager, who is Erin Richards. I've been in discussion with her. Linda and I have been in discussion with her. She will take the job and sign the contract, assuming that the terms are agreeable to both sides. But roughly, these are the terms. It would be $60,000 a year. There would be no stipend for the wellness, because we rolled that over into an increased salary. There are no paid benefits, but there would be this pretty standard vacation, paid holidays, those types of things, and they'll be spelled out in the agreement, in the contract. She's going to be full-time as an employee, and she will be working remotely for a period of time. And today she sent a schedule to us. So for instance, during the month of May, she'll be here for 1 week and then remotely the other weeks. The same thing for June, July, and August. And that's based on the fact she hasn't relocated to Bluff, but that's anticipated at some point late in the fall when the seasons are over for restaurants and resorts. She started yesterday, and I think this is a really excellent fit for us. Erin's been working with Linda and me for the last year plus. She's done a lot of projects. I think the strength of Erin is, one, she's extremely organized and directional. And number two, she understands budgets. And my hope would be that the budget piece is something that I can have somebody on staff working with me, with the accountant, and with all of the interfacing with the auditors that Linda and I have to do, so that we have institutional knowledge with somebody on how we do this. So the one thing I would like to do, so if I would like a vote that it's okay to make that offer in the contract for $60,000, because it's a little higher than we talked about. We did say as high as 60, but we tried to stay between 40 and 50 with that stipend of, I think it was 3,600, which we're not adding separately. So question.
I don't have any questions, but I am prepared to make a motion if you're ready for one.
Go ahead.
I'd make a motion that we hire Erin Richards as our town manager at a salary of $60,000, and have her work remotely until August when she relocates to Bluff. And really excited.
Second. Oh. Second, yeah.
Okay, so it wouldn't be August, it'd be the end of the season at some point, but is that okay to amend it to that?
Amend that, please. Yes, ma'am.
Any other discussion or questions? Then all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right.
I see that Erin is on. Erin, congratulations. You are now part of what might feel like one flew over the cuckoo's nest at some point. So,
Welcome.
Thank you, Erin. We can't hear you, but we see you, and we're happy to have you join back in.
Yeah.
Thank
Welcome
you.
to Thunderdome.
Thank you. I look forward to helping you all. And as many people know, I am eternally grateful for all that Bluff has given me. And I am very excited to move back. So thank you.
thank you. And next week, I'll definitely have the contract. What held Chris up a little bit, I think, was that in order for him to finish the contract, he needed to go in and amend. It's either our resolution or ordinance that spells out our job duties. And so he needed to fit Erin into that job duty amendment. And I, quite frankly, I was a little slow at getting that piece off to him. So we'll have it by next week, then we'll vote on the contract in totality. But I think it's one that we've all discussed, and welcome aboard. Either that or we get a whole week of free work, right?
Yeah, that's how that works. Thank you.
All right, so now we can move to 10, discussion on opening up the Bluff Community Center and Fire Mesa Kitchen for public rentals like we used to do. So I'm going to let you all talk about it and see what your thoughts are given where we're at in the state of pandemic.
I think we should continue to respond as we feel necessary, and I feel like opening up that currently under current conditions is what we should do. I'll make a motion to do both those.
So was the motion to open it up? Okay, I would second that.
Go ahead and open back up pending COVID complications. If something changes, then we'll react to that. But in the meantime, let's get back open. And let's see how it goes.
Yeah, so I would second that motion.
So there are two things that kind of pop in my mind. Right now, we've been somewhat enforcing as much as possible wearing masks when you're inside the building, and trying to keep our social distances from, grouping up and doing it, whatever. Do we want to just not have that be a part of it, just go back to rentals and monitor this as we go? Or do we want to still try to make people wear masks and socially distance?
I thought
I kind of
Go ahead.
think, so go ahead. Yeah, I kind of think that if there were some signs, most people are pretty getting more sophisticated about how to, where they choose to go and what they choose to do when they're there. I think all of us know that there's some occasions when we mask up and other occasions when we don't. And I think if we kept reminder signs in the community center, I think that would do it for me. Are we going to have unlimited numbers in the community center, or just to the fire department limit in the community center? Do we want to make that a little smaller number of people that can be in there? I don't know, but I don't think that enforcing mask up is. I mean, the pickleball people have not been masking up, and so some people are masking up if they feel comfortable, or they feel uncomfortable not masking, and they. So it's an individual choice at this point, and largely in most places.
I agree. And I think we could have a sign that says best practices are distances and mask, and the town of Bluff recommends best practices, and I think that pretty much encompasses what.
Yeah.
And that's what Dr. Sunada basically said last week when he was here, was that carry on and wait and see if anything changes.
What I would do on the number that Jim asked about, I think it's an important question, is rather than make a declaration of complete open numbers now, I would have our decision group committee look at kind of where we are health-wise, COVID-wise, and what the purpose of the large gathering would be, and try to make a decision. Is that something this board would agree with?
The one problem with that from an organizer's point of view is that they're going to want to know what they have, and they're not going to want to invite people or whatever and then have it change up at the last minute.
Well, I think we'd have to set it up beforehand, Lou. I agree with that. But, if it was, I don't know. I'm just trying to think through this. We can't go over our fire safety rating anyway, I assume. So
the fire safety rating is pretty packed, in terms of numbers. Think back to when Sally Jewell was here and they held to the fire numbers and we were like sardines in there. I like the idea of setting a number that the manager is comfortable in saying, this is the photography group, there's going to be 30 people. Okay. This is the family reunion of 400 people. Not okay. It has to come back to us. So can we just set like a number and say if it's over that amount projected, then we need to consider the event and what the conditions look like. But if it's under that number, that the manager can make that decision.
I think that's a good idea. What number are we? Are we 100? I mean, are we 75? What are you thinking?
Linda, when you did Chinese New Year, what was the general estimate once everybody got their plate and sat down? I remember that we still had a lot of movement for room between tables and, people weren't packed.
When we use the round tables will hold 8, maybe 9. And we used about 9 to 10 of them. And there was actually, you're right, there was a lot of room. We do have a graduation party signed up for end of May that I'm assuming won't be a really big number. Another possibility is we only, not that we're not popular, but we only allow one a week so that there's, so if more people wanted it in a week, we would only do one party or group.
And Linda, a weekend party would be considered one. Like if they had it Friday and Saturday, is that the same group would be considered one? Is that kind of what you're thinking?
I'm just thinking if it's two separate groups of people, basically.
Yeah.
So is it because we have a cleaning problem or lack of help, or what would help with not having groups in here?
Well, I know several people in Cortez right now that have COVID. It is starting up. And it's just, I mean, maybe it doesn't need to be a week, but maybe it needs to be a few days between usage. And part of that is cleaning, not that we don't have cleaning, but it's helpful to the cleaners, if they have a little time.
It sounds like I need to include in my motion 100 as the threshold for making a decision and having reviewed.
I don't think there were over 60 at the Chinese New Year, but I think we did a count and it seems to ring a bell, 60 or 70, something like that.
Better number, like 60 or 75 is better because I can amend that again.
Yeah, I think so.
75?
That's
But
still a
also
lot of people, yes.
But it seemed like that was mostly set up in half of it, too. It wasn't sprawled through the whole thing. So to me, it seems like 100's a good number. But anyway, just some number I think is a good idea that she can pass back to us if there's some big group coming.
Let's do 75 and we'll err on the safety side. And as far as a distance between rentals, what do you guys think? I mean, we could say 3-day minimum or something like that, which would kind of be maybe a airing out period, but non-consecutive. We could say something like that with 2 days in between. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, I think 3 days is probably good, and we it's unlikely that we're going to get that much business that is going to pack it in, but I think 3 days is fair.
Mayor,
if we did, have two groups that wanted it in the past couple of years, people have used the pavilion. So if a group was using the building, and someone wanted it, let's say the same weekend, not the same day, the pavilion is open.
Yeah, we're going to get some pretty hot days.
And we also can't really guarantee people aren't going to be in the bathroom or in the community center in between. So I don't know, it might be easier just to limit the numbers and take a look. And if it's available and we've got cleaning staff, I don't know. Anyway, up to you guys.
My motion is 75 with 3 days.
And so if the event projection is more than 75, the manager will bring a test to make that decision.
Or to upper management, yeah, you and Linda.
We're all upper management, sorry.
All right.
Does your second still stand on that, Luann?
I guess so. I think that's fine.
Then all in favor say aye. Aye.
Right.
Hi.
Anyone opposed? It's unanimous. Linda or I will talk with Carol and I'll, send an email to her and let her know what we're talking about. I don't want to make it burdensome for her, and I think this kind of helps get some direction.
I do too. Thanks for the suggestions.
So number 11, we haven't reviewed our code of conduct in a year or two. And the last couple of meetings, there have been a couple of things that I just would like to touch on. That in our very abbreviated code of conduct, it requires both the public and the council to be respectful. And sometimes we just all need to be reminded, like, what is respectful. And I think that when we allow someone to engage in name calling or assigning motives or doing those kinds of things, we're really not acting in the best interest of the community. And it occurred to me the last couple of times that we've had something said by either a resident or one of us that really is not appropriate. And I don't like having to substitute my judgment for what's an appropriate comment or an appropriate choice of words. So I just would like folks, both in the community and on the council, to just look over the code of conduct. It's on the website, and be mindful that if we're speaking, assigning a motive to, you did this and you said this, or name calling or negative comments are not going to be appreciated. And if I have to, I will exercise the right to boot the person off the microphone via Jim or Lou, whoever's got the control. But I know that we're better than that. And it's just a reminder. And then the other piece of that was, I like texting. It really cuts corners, but it is not part of the official record. So now I'm getting folks making substantive suggestions or requests via texting. The texting goes to my private phone. I'm fine with hey, can I meet with you? I'm fine with, do you have this that I can look at? But if you're making a request to the council, please put it in writing, either via email or a letter, even leaving a phone message that we can call you back. But that, I'm not going to want to give up my private phone for grandma requests. I don't think any of us want to. And 4 of us text, 4 of the 5 of us. So that's a reminder on the public record piece. Linda can't respond easily to a grandma request without our phones if that request is going through our phones. And there's one other thing. And the same thing is on now using the YouTube. Just a reminder that the council shouldn't have their phones either available or on to take public comment through that phone. Again, it's not part of the record. If I get a text on my phone and I happen to see it, I will break and read it loud to people. So it's not appropriate to be using the text or whatever to go back and forth because it's not part of the record, which is why we cut off the public comment. I think that's kind of what I wanted to say about that. So any thoughts, discussion?
It's always good to remind about code of conduct, since it's kind of an annual as needed. So I appreciate the idea that we need to treat each other with respect.
The San Juan County Commissioners got in big trouble a year or 2 ago because one of them got a text message in a meeting, and people in the audience wanted to know what was said, and it kind of became a big deal and was in the paper, and that's part of why we have email policy, because the state is pushing for that. So it's really important that you aren't using your phones unless if you have some emergency you're waiting to hear about it. That's one thing, but they should not be in use.
Okay, if that's it, then just a reminder that code of conduct is on the website, but if you have a suggestion about it, please feel free to send us an email on it. So moving to number 12, Jim Sayers and I met with Sunrise Engineering, meaning Ken Tuttle, Jim, do you want to summarize what we talked about today?
Yeah, I can a little bit. You're probably better at it, but it was really enlightening to me. They finished a study for us a few years ago, and Ken was following up and mentioned that we have a 40-year plan in place, but we also have to update that after, I believe, 9 years. And he wanted to ensure that we were going to prepare for that in a solid way. And really, he's a really conscientious guy. He's one of those business people who really cares about what he's doing. And we really have on the books. We have 690 acre feet that we possess. Water rights to 690 acre feet. And at the current time, we're using about 80 acre feet. And he's with the new water restrictions, I guess you could say, but there's a lot of concern in the mountain states, as we all know, about water, and that concern is going to be increased by the states. There's no question about it, and by everybody. That we need to really work hard to retain that 80 acre feet, show that we're using it. And the key is really showing use. And if we can get to a point where we can show use for as much of that 690 acre feet as possible, we're going to be ahead of the game. Otherwise, if you don't use it, ultimately you're going to lose it. And he's concerned about all the communities he works with. He's a very experienced guy. He's going to retire in a couple of years. And he just wanted to let us know that we need to get on this. And he's able to help us to do that. And I don't think it was at all, soliciting business. He likes Bluff. He likes people. He's a really good guy, and he's trying to help us out. And I think that's the gist of it. Do you want to take it from there? Is that pretty much a lot of it, Anne?
It is. And part of this was motivated from the meeting I attended on the end of March up in Monticello from the Division of Water Rights, where they were presenting some kind of a public hearing, and I didn't know what it was. So I went up there, and it was on the Navajo Nation settlement and the treaties and the water use. And the person presenting emphasized several times that if you don't use your water, you're going to end up losing it. And one of the things that they'll be doing is that same analysis that they did for the Navajo Nation's use. The water rights adjudication is what it's called. When they adjudicate the water rights, they're going to be doing that same process for Monticello, Blanding, and Bluff in a couple of years. And so then I had asked Bluff Waterworks if we were not using all of our water, and they said that was correct. Well, in the meantime, Ken Tuttle had followed up on the recommendations that they had given the Bluff service area back in 2017 and 2019 to us through the 40 and 50 year plans. And he was reviewing his action notes and wanting to meet with communities to tell them, that these are the things that they recommended then and that haven't moved forward. So let's see, in 2017, the estimate that he gave to kind of secure some of this was that around $12,000. Well, we're 5 years later, 6 years later, who knows? So I asked him if he could put together kind of an outline proposal as to what we might be looking at if we wanted to take care of these 2 or 3 recommendations that he had. So he'll be doing that. But, I know there's always a suspicion that we're being solicited for business by engineers or accountants or whoever. But, this is a firm that BSA worked with, that we worked with, and the concerns are there. So maybe if people want to look at other engineering plans or firms, that's fine. But I think getting the information as to where we might be with our water use and what we need to do to secure it is really important.
Great job, y'all. Great job. Let's keep working on it. Water is life. We all know that. And it's the most important thing that we can do, really.
Well, yeah, exactly. And the 9-year update on the plan is required, is going to require a plan in itself. And we need to prepare for that. We don't want to try to put that together at the last minute. And he had some really good recommendations for planning, and I was just impressed today. So I'm looking forward to his suggestions and moving forward with this.
Any other questions or thoughts?
I just want to, the last thing is that we all ran for office, and I think every single one of us mentioned when we spoke to the citizens of Bluff that how much we need to protect the water. That really resonated with most of the residents of Bluff. I'm sure it resonates with all of us as well. So we want to keep that foremost in our minds.
Yeah.
All right. So this is water related, but not necessarily on that plan. Jim's been doing a sewer treatment plant re-upping of the certified operator, and it's a big thing on all of the firefighter foams, all the plastics, everything that's in all of our water, and it's gone into bloodstreams and so on, and it's in everybody all across the world. It's a contaminant, but we've never figured out where our water comes from, and it does recharge in the winter. I can tell that by the pressure on the well and whatnot, but I'm curious if there's any test that would test our water to see if we have any of the plastics in it. So I'm kind of researching that to see if maybe Gary Giannini has access to a lab that would do that, or but anyway, just for your 1014.
And that's interesting you mentioned that, because when Jim and I got off that call, I sent an email to Gary and to Mary Gillum about the student who's going to supposedly come and do a study and spend 6 weeks here and look at the aquifer. And I hadn't heard anything more on it for a couple months, so I just sent an email off saying, where are we with getting some student help down here? Mary followed up on it. So hopefully in the next week we'll hear something, and maybe that's something that Gary will be able to help us with.
Yeah, he was in town. I didn't meet the student, but he did pass through. He popped in for a second. It's been a couple weeks ago, I guess. And then saw him going back out of town, just happened to be at the intersection. So I don't know any more than that, but he does have a student out here working on it.
Great. Maybe we'll get some answers. Then number 13, Linda, report on the Salem County Economic Development, and then the wayfinding meeting.
So about, 2 years ago, possibly, the economic development started looking into the wayfinding sign project. And Natalie, who was the director then, was able to secure funds of, I think it's $50,000. And what this is supposed to do is there's signs that have, so Ann and I went to this meeting a couple days last week, and the object is to have signs throughout the county that identify specific things. And in Vernal, and there's other places too, but in Vernal they have this, and their signs have a dinosaur on it and some cliffs, and they point out certain things. And parts of the county, like us, might have less we might have one. We can choose, actually. I mean, we could choose not to do this if we didn't want to, or we can choose to do it. I think to actually get the signs will take more money. I think the 50,000 is more a planning thing. And so the signs, the signs could possibly point to the trailhead, or like I said, Sand Island. We would get together as a community and discuss possibilities. And so while we were there, the company that does this talked to us. And then as a group, we had a lot of people there. Some UDOT people, Chris Hansen from the Cedars, more economic development people. And so we talked about specific things that, it reminded me about being in a school. We did brainstorming where we talked about what colors San Juan County makes us think of, what animals, what that kind of thing. So it was just kind of a brainstorming thing for the company to get kind of an idea. What food? I can't really see a sign that says Navajo tacos here, but it was.
How about mac and cheese?
Kind of Mickey, I'm sorry, I missed that.
I was being facetious. I said,
But anyway, so this was the first meeting, and then we'll have another meeting in a month or so, I think. And then eventually the towns and communities will all be a part of it. So this system would go from Monument Valley to Spanish Valley. And so it's to keep tourists interested and aware that there are more things to see than just arches and, natural bridges.
And there's two real places to have rest areas in San Juan County. One, to my mind, is kind of right before you drop off White Mesa. You can see Shiprock.
Oh.
And I would think, you can see a lot from up there, Monument Valley. The other place is up north of Landing, coming off Alkali Ridge, and they're perfect spots for a little visitation, restrooms. We need some comfort stations in the southern part of the county. So, to me, I think that's an important thing. You can have signage there pointing out where the Four Corners is, as opposed to individually naming things. Just an idea from me.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, it really is something where they're just throwing out a wide net as to if you had a common sign plan for all of San Juan County points of interest that you wanted to mark, and then how would you differentiate from community to community? The next morning, I met with the two planners for about 20 minutes separately from the group. They were interested in knowing, they were sitting down with an official from each of the areas to try to get a census to individually what we thought. And the first thing I said was, we deliberately have focused our general plan on not being cluttered on the highway. And these are signs only along the highway because it's a grant from UDOT. And so there were a couple of suggestions that had been thrown out at them that I said, when you get to the point of bringing it before the town, I'm not sure that these are points of interest that people would want flagged. And, one of the things are the high visitation areas where we already have a lot of traffic. There was a suggestion to them to flag Butler Wash. And I said, I'm one person, I don't know, but we have a lot of traffic there. We lack rangers. I'm not sure that that's what Bluff would want. But, things like being able to point to Sand Island while you're in town, Sand Island 3 miles out or something, rather than waiting till you're right on top of it. I think there are those things. And I think one really big thing is that these are not advertisements for businesses or personal gain. These are for points of interest that would be coming off the highway. So they're on the right of way for UDOT. And then, of course, UDOT's there because it's safety. That's what they're focused on. So the signs have to follow all the UDOT standards, like the colors. I do
Focus per hour in Bluff for safety.
Yeah.
If they're safe.
And so it was just a really interesting exercise. And, like Linda said, it's only $50,000. That's not going to get us signs. It's just a tool to get people talking. Lou, did you?
Yeah, I just want to point out that since we are a town, we get to have some say whether or not all these signs get put in or not.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate that, because I think your points are well taken, that we maybe don't want that much more attention drawn to some of these sites. So I appreciate that we get to have a say.
Yeah. And Linda's right. I mean, we can just say, it was fun going to the planning meeting, and we, good luck everybody else, but we're not doing it. And that, I think, is something that is an option. How many signs do we want, and what do we want at earmark? But so since it's an agreement with UDOT ultimately, and it's, I hate to say this, but the sounds of it, to even get to the point of doing the first little signing is probably 2 to 3 years out. So.
And the other point of that, I think, is brought attention that it could be a within the town sort of project that would point to businesses or places within town for walkers and people on bikes and travelers coming into town. So that was, the awareness of the possibility, I think, was a good thing too. But.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, it's good. It's good to be involved, because then you don't get a surprise at the end where somebody made a decision thinking that you wanted it, and we haven't had the input. So anything else on that? Okay, apologies for the goofiness of number 14. I had 2 letters that we looked at from the BLM last week. And the day of the meeting, a 3rd letter came in, but I hadn't put it in the minutes or in the agenda. So I held on to it. Well, of course, I filed it away and couldn't find it. So I couldn't remember what to call it. But it is the finding of effect for Colorado outward bound special recreation permit. And basically, it's giving us the same 30 days to respond or make public comment if we have it. I sent it out to everyone a day ago or 2 days ago, but not in time to change the agenda to reference it. So these cultural resources, again, are subject to any information, questions, cultural resources in the project area. We can contact Bears Ears National Monument archaeologist Jared Lundell at M like Mary Lundell, LUND like dog, ELL at BLM.gov. And so if you read it and you think we should have a discussion and do something more formally, let me know and I'll put it back on the agenda. But I apologize for the odd wording that I had to use. Did everybody get it? That would be the next question. Did I send it?
I didn't see it, but it's probably not your fault. I just
I haven't read it either, Mayor, but I'll
Okay.
I'll look.
I don't have it, so I think you just need to send it again. I was wondering which one, and I assumed it was the other issues.
Oh, yeah, this is a new one.
It could be.
I don't think any of us have gotten it. It's not showing up in my search anyway.
I will look. If it shows up that I sent it, I'll let you know. I kind of remember sending it, but I may not have because I was trying to find the right one. But we have 30 days, which takes us to roughly the end of May if we want to do a response. Then anything on the other?
Do you want to announce the time of the public hearing?
I believe it's 6:00 p.m. on Thursday. but it'll also go out on the invitation and it's posted.
Okay,
I think it's
all right,
fine.
that's where we'll see you all again.
And I'm thinking that I'll just go to the community center so that I can have, a couple paper copies of the budgets if people want to look at them, but they are on our website, and I will try to put them on the public notice website as well. But if you don't have access to a computer and you want a hard copy, if you let me know, I'll make one available to you.
Okay, and the way the screen is set up, I've got the transcribing computer so we can put it on the screen and be able to scroll through it too while.
I'm not doing that. If you can,
That's what I'm doing, tonight. So it will be semi-available, but I think paper copies would be good.
given that I seem to skip at least once over an agenda item every time, you don't want me trying to use a screen and pen and paper and look at my screen. It's not going to work. All right, anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
7:24.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? It's unanimous. I'm turning
Thank
off
you.
the computers.
Good meeting, guys. And
Yep. Thank you.